Hi Hannah, thank you so much for meeting with us today and just answering some questions. We're going to go ahead and start, and we're going to ask if you could describe a typical day in your hometown.
Okay. Usually, if you're a college student, you go to school. Our first period it starts from 9:15, so we go to school, and after we finish school, most of the people have part-time job out of the school, so they go and work, and they work for a long time, like until 12.
Oh, wow.
I don't have a job, so I just went to the library, but most college students work.
Hey Miki, thank you so much for meeting with me today.
Of course.
So I'm just going to ask you some questions about Japan and your life there and what it's been like coming here. So my first question is, describe a typical day in the lives of the people in your town.
I think for students, many people go to school and after they finish school, they go to a part-time job to work and others hang out.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. And you go to the school in the town you grew up in, right? What's the name of the city?
It's called Fukuoka.
Okay.
What is a typical thing or activity you do for fun with friends and family?
I personally often went just window shopping or like go for a walk and take pictures and stuff.
I think they go shopping
Yeah.
because in Fukuoka there's one big area
Oh.
which is nice place to go shopping.
Yeah.
And they go there, and there are also lots of nice restaurants there.
Yeah. Really?
As far as music and entertainment, the most popular type of music, according to the Japanese Billboard charts, is J-pop.
A little bit about the history of Japan. In 1603, after decades of civil warfare, this military leader kind of ushered in a long period of political stability and peace that entered a long period of Japanese stability and flowering of culture. This allowed Japan to grow really strong. And once the Industrial Revolution came along, they were able to industrialize very quickly and become a powerful economic and military entity, even taking over parts of China and Taiwan. Japan attacked U.S. forces in World War II, triggering America's entry into World War II, and soon occupied much of East and Southeast Asia. After it was defeated in World War II, Japan recovered and became an economic power and allied of the U.S., and it still is today. Some of Japan's historic heroes, sports figures, TV personalities, and movie stars, one of which is Makoto Nagano, who is a game show winner. He appeared on the original Ninja Warrior and was the first person to complete all 3 stages of the competition, and is an incredible figure for them. Also, a historic hero is Ishiro Honda, who's the director of Godzilla and was a main person for them in their culture, as well as Hayato Ideka, the prime minister from 1960 to 1964, someone they look up to a lot like we would look up to maybe FDR here in the States.
Japan is a very densely populated country. Its 3 largest cities are the capital, Tokyo, which has 8.3 million people, Yokohama, which has a little over 3.5 million people, and Osaka, which has 2.5 million people. The Emperor of Japan is currently the only head of state with the English title Emperor, and his name is Akihito. However, Japan is a constitutional monarchy, so it's primarily ruled by its prime minister, Shinzo Abe.
Describe Japan's government or the health or educational institutions, or all of them.
I think the national diet of Japanese government consists of like the House of Representatives and also the House of Councillors.
They are a parliamentary constitutional monarchy, which means that they operate a lot like the United Kingdom, and that they have a representative head that is a monarchical kind of hereditary line, but really the parliament and the prime minister hold a lot of the power, and it functions very similar to the UK system, which we are so very familiar with.
I think American they have more knowledge about their government. But in Japan, like, it changes so frequently. It's hard to like know
Keep up
what's
with it.
happening.
The education system in Japan is an incredibly good system that's run by the government. It has a 98% graduation rate from high school and is among the top in scholarship around the world.
Education, it starts from elementary school, and we have to go to until junior. I think you said differently. We have elementary school for 6 years, then junior high school for 3 years, and high school for 3 years.
We have to go to
Okay.
elementary school and junior high school,
Oh,
but
okay.
you can choose whether you go to high school or
Mhm.
not.
Okay,
It's your
really?
free choice. Yes.
Okay, I didn't realize that.
The healthcare system in Japan is also run by the government and is highly government subsidized. Private insurance is really only kind of to substitute where the government doesn't make up for its healthcare system.
Food usually is some sort of variation on noodles, rice, and or seafood. Being an island, they have a lot of access to seafood, and rice and noodles are very easy to make and grow. They do eat ramen in Japan, however, it is much more elaborate rather than just a microwavable noodles. They actually prepare it like a real meal. As far as clothing goes, for people who are our age, in their 20s, college students, in Japan, almost all junior and senior high school students have to wear uniforms. So when they get to college, they have this new thing where they can choose what they wear every day. And in response to that new freedom, many of them start spending a lot of money on clothes and accessories. So regardless of whether the end result is fashionable or not, many of the people you'll see on a Japanese college campus have put a lot of thought into what they're wearing.
Japanese is spoken by about 125 million speakers. Not much is known about the language's history, or even when it first appeared in Japan. Substantial texts did not appear in the 8th century, until the 8th century. Japanese has no genetic relationship with Chinese. However, it makes extensive use of Chinese characters, and a large portion of its vocabulary is borrowed from the Chinese language.
Like any culture, Japanese culture has some little mannerisms that might be unfamiliar to foreigners, such as the Japanese tend to be a lot more direct in their questioning of foreigners than we would be here in America. So you may be asked personal questions such as how much money do you earn, or how large is your house, which is something you would never say to somebody in America unless they were very close friends. Avoid using large hand gestures, unusual facial expressions, and any dramatic movements. The Japanese do not talk with their hands like we do in the United States, and to do so could distract your host. The Japanese also rarely entertain in the home, so if you're invited to the home of your Japanese host, consider it a great honor and a display of a tremendous amount of appreciation. There are also strict rules regarding indoor manners in Japan, which are related to specifically footwear. Shoes are removed not only in the home, but also in many traditional Japanese-style inns. Some restaurants, temples, castles, and other historic buildings as well. The border is not the door itself, so you don't necessarily have to remove your shoes as soon as you enter, but there's an entrance area where shoes should be removed, and shoes should always point towards the door rather than into the building.
What feelings or attitudes do they possess that would be similar or different from like our American culture?
I think one thing I noticed is about whenever I passed people on the road,
Yeah.
they said hi or how's it going,
Uh-huh.
but we don't usually do that.
You don't do that
Yes.
at home?
Yes.
Okay.
I think it's very friendly
Yeah.
and yes. It's
Was that surprising at first when you came here? Were you
Yes,
like,
kind
oh.
of. Yes.
Yeah.
Because whenever I pass people in my country, we are like very quiet.
Really?
Yes.
Oh, that's so funny. Yeah, that's a lot different than
Mhm.
Washita.
Mhm.
I think in our culture, it's more important to like act the same way with others. Like I feel like in America, like being unique and your identity is more important. But in Japan, it's more important to be as like not outstanding as possible.
So as far as the religion goes, there's 3 main religions, and that's Shinto, Buddhism, and Confucianism. And Confucianism is more used centuries ago, but for Buddhism and Shinto, those 2 are the main religions in Japan. Shintoism is not a monotheistic religion. They don't really believe that there's an absolute God. They don't really have any scripture. What they do believe in is little sacred god or little sacred spirits called kamis, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. And what these are important concepts of daily life, such as wind, mountains, trees, grass, rain, fertility, even academics. So, for example, when someone who achieves highly in academics and they die, their spirit now becomes a kami, and that's what people worship, is their highly achieved academic kami. And so it's a very people-oriented religion. It's very much based on tradition and not so much on an absolute God or scripture to base their daily life. And then as far as Buddhism, it first originated in India, but then it came to Japan in the 6th century. Mahayana, or Greater Vehicle, is the main branch of Buddhism in Japan. However, the religion does not directly affect the everyday life of average Japanese people. Okay, according to The Japanese Today by Edwin Reischauer, in Shintoism, shrines are very popular when they die and their spirit becomes a kami. Shrines are dedicated to the various kamis are to be found everywhere. The main one for the sun goddess stands at Ise, east of the old capital district, facing the rising sun across the Pacific Ocean. And that's just an example of how people worship the kamis, and if it is a very highly achieved person, they will worship that kami and make a shrine out of it.
After I came to America, I started to read the Bible with my friends, and now I read the Bible alone in the morning as well, every day. And I feel like that gave me a good impact. Mm-hmm. And now, earlier this semester, I accepted Jesus to be my Savior, and I think that was one of my biggest decisions in my life.
As far as what do they believe about themselves and the world they live in where Miki and Hannah are from, it's the very south tip of Japan, and it is kind of different than the rest of Japan. Although it is a very disciplined and structured area, they also oppose a lot of the worldviews. And so where they're from, life is slower, it's more adventurous and natural. The people are more welcoming. They really highlight hospitality in their lives. While discipline is a very common thing, they also strive to be pure in their attitude and pure in their walks. And as far as unique values, first and foremost, if they're Shintos, they value their kamis, their sacred spirits. But if not regarding religion, they are a very innovative area. They're focused on academics. They're futuristic. They really like to look towards the future and how they can better themselves. With eyes focused on the future, the city takes leadership in both industry and academics as a model for the city. They look to renew and urbanize the whole area. So they're very futuristic in all that they value rather than looking at the past.